Welcome to our weekly town hall. I'm excited. I want to read off to you really quickly the lineup that we have for you. We were going to be visited, or joined rather, by two awesome NCOs from our local AFSA chapter. We also have a special guest POW that's going to be joining us. And Colonel Westy will be joining us a little bit later in the broadcast from Public Health. And as we do every Friday, we will open up the lines to your questions or concerns. So please make sure that you take note of the number at the bottom of the screen here momentarily. So with that, as we know, National POW MIA Day is next Friday. And so I'd like to pan over to Sergeant Baca and Sergeant Pitts, who will be talking to us about the series of events that they've put together for next week. But first, I want to introduce our special POW. U.S. Army veteran Andrew Ramirez, POW for Kosovo, Operation Allied Force, is joining us today. So, Mr. Ramirez, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for the invitation to be here today. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon. I know you guys had a little bit of weather trouble yesterday, so I'm glad that it's nice and sunny today. Before I speak about my experience, I would first like to be sure that we also recognize those that lost their lives during the 9/11 attacks. It's difficult to believe that it has been 20 years since that terrible morning. Please keep those that lost their lives and their families in your heart tomorrow. It is a great honor for me to speak at this event honoring POW MIA Recognition Day on September 17th and the week leading up to it. Days such as this one are necessary reminders that our freedom is not free. All throughout the year, we go along with our daily lives taking full advantage of this freedom, not always having the time to remember the countless men and women, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Marines, that have gone missing from the battlefield. This week, I ask that you think about all those that spent times in the hands of our enemies. They've given up years of their lives. They've done whatever they could to stand up to show our enemy that Americans are nothing to be messed with. So I just want to remind us that it is an experience that I do share with those others, but many of those others never had the chance to return home. Many of them made the ultimate sacrifice in a prison camp or in a death march at the hands of the enemy after years of starvation, physical torture, mental anguish, and pain beyond anything that we can imagine. Some attempted escape, and they were made examples of what happens when you try that. So I just want to make sure that we keep those in mind that live only in family memories and in photographs. I actually have had the great honor to meet many of those men and women, young women, who were captured by the enemy, and their stories amaze me to this day. There's stories of people being captured, escaping from one group of enemy only to be captured again by another. Stories of being shot down, evading the enemy for weeks until their luck ran out, and being interrogated, having their fingers or limbs cut off. So I just really feel that those memories, those people need to always be in our mind, but you especially want to remember them during this time. On March 31st, 1999, I disappeared from the face of the earth. Me and two of my fellow soldiers were gone with one radio transmission report that we were taking direct fire while on a routine patrol along the Macedonian border. Our time in Macedonia began as a United Nations mission, but that day, March 31st, it started out just like others. After we had to have that mission canceled, we became the U.S. Army again. We'd set up and lived in a forward observation post, watching the border between Serbia and Macedonia for about 7 days before I took that fateful patrol that led to my capture. The day before, Sergeant Chris Stone had led all the other vehicle commanders on a route reconnaissance so that we could find a route out in case we needed to move out quickly. I stayed back and I ran the OP. So that day was my turn to see the route. And this reconnaissance mission took a real turn when we re-entered a village we'd passed through that was now eerily quiet and looked a lot different than it did when we passed through the first time. So we pulled up a little further to take a good look and started to hear some tinks on the armor of the Humvee, up-armored Humvee. And, I out loud wondered what that was until Stephen Gonzalez, the specialist up in the gunner's hatch, jumped down telling us it was direct fire. So I was the driver. I took a nice right, trying to go away from the enemy fire that we had recorded, and we ran straight into a platoon or two that had been digging in an ambush, probably for the next patrol that would come through. Because every good scout knows you don't go back the way that you came. On this day, though, I was learning the route, so I actually had to see it both ways. Yes, we had 50 caliber on top of the vehicle, and yes, we were loaded with ammunition. We were loaded with hand grenades, but due to the rules of engagement, we were not allowed to be locked and loaded, and in fact, all the ammo boxes and crates were uselessly sealed and stacked in the back of the vehicle. So I drove away, trying to head back the way we had come, taking hundreds of rounds from AK-47, seeing what appeared to be an RPG or grenade explosion, until our engine was disabled and our vehicle inoperative. You see, the crew cabin compartment was nicely armored, thank God, but the engine compartment was still made out of fiberglass at that time. The tires were not heavy duty, not protected, they were just weak and exposed. So with the radio disabled, our vehicle smoking, our weapons uselessly unloaded, we were forced from the Humvee, beaten viciously with rifles, fists, boots, dragged out of our equipment, and marched through the now lively village. A village now filled with angry villagers that threw rocks, punches, and as we were taken to a horse stable, thrown down on our knees, where we expected to be executed at the hands of the Serbian army. I was placed in the middle, so all I could think about was that I would see one of my comrades killed before it was my turn. I thought it was the end of my life, and that's a feeling I will never forget. For a couple days, our fellow soldiers and our families thought we were dead. As I was driving, Chris Stone had reported our grid location, but our platoon sergeant had only received the first part of before our radio had gone dead. We could have been anywhere along that section of the border, so there was no way to get us any sort of reinforcement. So we were given some quick medical attention, loaded the back of a truck, and driven north into Serbia. We were moved around to different hideouts, safe houses, where we were interrogated for 10 days. That time is a blur, and I hallucinated so badly from lack of sleep, food, and water, and having my head covered that I had no clue where I was at any given moment. We had our hands and legs bound and were made to lie on the ground. After 10 days of being asked the same questions over and over, we were finally just taken to a Serbian prison, and we were kept there for the remainder of the time. My memories are filled with mostly sitting around, not doing much of anything else, in my 6x10-foot cell. My mother's memory is the memory of Army chaplain, casualty assistance officer, walking up to her doorstep about 2 days after our capture. She remembers the feeling of being told that I was missing in action and that nobody knew our location. But then I started to appear on television, being flaunted in front of Serbian news cameras, along with my 2 platoon mates. Not the best news, but I was alive and I got to come home to my family and friends 32 days later to continue my life. Many are not given that opportunity to return, to hug their loved ones ever again. They disappear and they never come back. So my story does have the happiest of endings. I live each and every day with my beautiful wife and children. I enjoy my weekends and vacations, and I get to live my life. So many times, there's many things people say to me, but really I'm just happy to know that I did what I could to serve my country. Each and every one of the military members on this base would do the rest, or would do the same, and they would not change anything that they've done. They do it so that we can rest and sleep soundly each night. So please take a moment this week, remember the sacrifices of those that have been prisoners of war, those that were or still may be missing in action. May they never be forgotten. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. for sharing that. That is a very impactful story to share. When you hear POW, typically people think about, World War II, the Korean War, or, Vietnam War, something a little more in the past. So to hear your account of what happened with you and your platoon mates, something so recent, it's just very, like I said, very impactful. Often we talk about resilience in the Air Force, in the DoD, and just in general. I guess I would ask if you had anything to offer anybody that struggles with bouncing back from things that they've endured or experienced, based on what you dealt with and what you all went through while you were over there. Could you offer us anything to help people who may need some pointers on what you do to kind of bounce back, if you will?
Oh, definitely. I did for a long time feel that there was nothing wrong with me, nothing different about me. But I think at some point we all have to really agree, we really have to take a look at ourselves and say, we just need to talk to people. So really talking, communication, finding really strong people to be with. My wife and children definitely help. They help to ground you. They help to let you know that you're really not in those situations anymore. So it's very important for people to find somebody that they can let know any of those issues, any of the problems that they may have, but really be honest with those people that will listen, people that will not always understand exactly what you've gone through, but they are there to let you know that you're no longer in that situation.
Absolutely. I also appreciate the fact that you brought up tomorrow, Patriot Day, 9/11, as most of us refer to it. This will be the 20-year anniversary after those attacks on our nation. And so, like you kind of mentioned, I hope everyone is able to block out a moment of their day to just kind of take a moment of silence to remember the fallen and honor those that we lost. And 9/11, although it was 20 years ago, it's still very fresh for some people, especially if they had people that were impacted, or if people around them were impacted. It impacted all of us. And so I often reflect back on, and I don't have a fresh account of all my memories, but that one, it's pretty clear in my mind on what was going on in my mind that day, seeing first responders on TV and people around me gearing up to head out the door for deployments and that sort of thing. And so it is a big deal, and it is, like I just mentioned before, a moment to reflect on resilience for people and for us to all just kind of come together. I think we're all on the same side when it comes to bonding and helping everybody to get through tough times like that. So again, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and hopefully there will be, I know there will be people tonight at the dinner. I will be there as well, and I hope that a lot of folks were able to take advantage of that event. And so with that, Sergeant Baca, Sergeant Pitts, would you mind kind of talking about that event and also the other events that you kind of have lined up for this remembrance, if you will?
Yes, ma'am, Chief. Appreciate you having us on. Mr. Ramirez, for the next 8 hours, you're going to be known as Staff Sergeant Ramirez. Appreciate you coming out and doing this for us. It's an awesome thing. But for the events tonight, we have the POW-MIA dinner, which only 50 people will be able to attend. We wanted to make it a bigger event. As AFSA, we have 125 chapters around the world that partner with their local bases to ensure that the POW-MIA day is honored, and we remember those that paid, their dues, if you will. Unfortunately, we were going to do this on the 17th, but we had to move it up due to some scheduling conflicts, but still awesome that we're getting to do this. So we have that tonight, and then next week, we are authorized by the wing commander to wear our POW MIA patches in place of our unit patch to continue that honoring all the way up till the 17th. And then on the 17th, that morning, we're going to have a motorcycle escort lone runner that'll leave from the Air Force Test Center building and run all the way to the gym track, where we'll have an opening ceremony type event and kick off the 5K vigilance run, which is also a ruck, walk, whatever the folks that are out there honoring our POW MIAs want to do. And then that's pretty much it. So thank you, Chief, once again for having us on.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it's just been a distinct pleasure. I came to Sergeant Pitts in April during the Air Force Sergeant, our first Sergeant Symposium, and I've done several events, especially as a young airman. I was a ceremonial guardsman, and so these type of events, paying that homage, is just a distinct honor. So I told him I wanted to come on as the POW MIA Week lead, as the newly PCSM member. So it's just a distinct honor to do such with such an amazing team. This is a great Air Force Sergeants Association chapter. I just want to say thank you to Sergeant Pitts in particular, the wing leadership, Chief, for helping to endorse this, and then a special shout out to Miss Brittany No and Tech Sergeant Nichols, who have also been behind the scene, helping make sure these events transpire. So and Mr. Ramirez, thank you so much. I got chills from your story, so
Thank you.
that's all I really have to say. But thank you again, and please do take that time to take that second of just a moment of silence or reflection.
Absolutely. Like I said, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Thank you also to Sergeant Pitts and Sergeant Baca for joining us today to help us to, kick off this week coming up to do POW MIA remembrance. Hopefully, folks, you will have a chance to either do the dinner, the 5K, and or both, if you've had a chance to sign up for those. We look forward to seeing you out there on the 17th if you're able to make it. The number on the screen is just popped up. As you all know, 707-412-8922 is the number that you will be able to bring your questions and concerns forward. At the moment, we're going to transition over and have Colonel Westy come in from Public Health so that she can give us the update on where we are with Operation Max Vax. And then she'll also be standing by for any follow-on questions to how we're doing with that effort. So if you'll just bear with us here momentarily, I'll go ahead and say that I hope most of you fared well through the storm yesterday. That was kind of unexpected for me. I was told that it never rains here, and when it does, it's more in the April timeframe for about a week or so, and out of nowhere, we had some of the fiercest rain that I've seen in quite some time. So like I said, hopefully everyone fared well. I know that there were some outages and some leaks into some of the buildings, and there's some flooding and things of that nature. So hopefully all of those issues have been reported accordingly so that we can get the right people in to help take care of those. If you have any issues that haven't been reported, please make sure that you get that information up so that we can make sure we get out there to take care of you all. And I guess, Jeremy, since you're standing by, are there any questions that are non-COVID related that we have come in yet?
Yes, Chief, we don't have any questions non-COVID related at the moment.
Okay, well, that's fair. We can also just hold off until Colonel Westy's set up so that she can kind of kick things off, and then we'll go into what you do have.
Sounds good.
So no worries there. I wish I had some jokes or something. I'm not a singer. You definitely don't want me singing on the microphone, so I won't do that. I don't have any jokes readily available at the moment. I'll make sure to have some of those in my hip pocket for next time. But Jeremy, what do you have? Do you have any interesting facts or things that came up around the wing?
I don't know about interesting facts, Chief, but I would like to thank all of the squadron and group leadership for your responses to recent events and making sure that we are supporting the DoD as a whole. I appreciate you guys working with us on short notice to make that possible, and we were able to successfully execute that. So I appreciate that effort.
Excellent point. Absolutely. So I think we're all set for Colonel Westy, ma'am. You're almost up. So I'm happy that you were able to make it over. I know it was kind of a short notice, but I appreciate you joining us.
Hey, everybody. So I'll go and start. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Westy. I'm the Public Health Emergency Officer for the installation. I'm also a pediatrician, occupational medicine physician. So I've been trying to advise the wing on all things COVID. We're about 18 months into the pandemic, and it's still ongoing, and we're definitely into this surge that's still continuing to climb and peak at this point. So a lot of different things that have happened in the last couple of weeks that have come down with a push for vaccination. And the reason for that push for vaccination is because there is more and more data that is coming through to show how effective that the vaccines are and how much those who are not getting vaccinated are unfortunately being hospitalized and dying, which is really heartbreaking, really sad, because at this point, this is a vaccine preventable disease. It's a vaccine preventable death. It's a vaccine preventable hospitalization, vaccine preventable morbidity, which means long-term outcomes, long-term complications from getting COVID. And there's so much more research now showing that those who are vaccinated, even if they do get infected, fare a lot better than those who are unvaccinated. And it's just really sad, really unfortunate. Every time I call somebody to tell them that they have COVID and they were just on that border about getting the vaccine or not, and they were like, oh, I wish I had gotten the vaccine earlier. I wish I wasn't hesitant about it. You hear through social media and people who are, in their hospital beds and just pleading with people, please get vaccinated. Don't do what I did and wait. So now is the time to get vaccinated. And it really is, the concern really is because there is a huge population that cannot get the vaccine, and that's our children. That's the pediatric population. And I think that's the saddest part of this all, is that we are not doing enough to protect our children. And even if you don't have kids in your house, even if you're a single person, when you get COVID, your germs, you're basically a little vaccine factory. So when you get COVID, or a little virus factory, sorry, when you get COVID, that virus basically goes into your body, which is like a little factory to make more virus, and that virus will go to another person. That virus will eventually find a child, and that child may actually have some really bad outcomes from that. So again, the pediatric population is really where my concern is. That's my heart and soul, is pediatrics, and I just feel so bad that they're not getting protected as much as they can be protected because adults aren't being adults at this point. Again, AAP actually found that 25% of the new COVID cases are in pediatric population, and a lot of PICU beds are at 100% maximum capacity. So that to me really breaks my heart. A colleague had posted about working with an 18-month-old who had gotten COVID, was in the ICU for 6 weeks, and unfortunately passed away from COVID. So that, and just the lungs were all white with infection. And that's just really heartbreaking. It really just brings home the fact that this is a very deadly disease. We've had some members on Edwards Air Force Base that have actually passed away from COVID recently. And unfortunately, we're unvaccinated, and, and it's and in the community, and that's what you hear a lot of times. We have people that are hospitalized that are unvaccinated, and it's just really heartbreaking because those are ripple effects that affect our whole entire community. So, the vaccine has really been proven to work, is really continuing to be very effective, even against the Delta variant. There's some new studies today from the CDC that shows that even at this height of this Delta surge with this Delta variant, the vaccines are continuing to be effective. So if you are vaccinated, you are 5 times less likely to get COVID, and you are more than 10 times less likely to be hospitalized, and more than 10 times less likely to pass away. So what we are seeing primarily in the hospitals and passing away are those who are unvaccinated. So it's not really a matter of if you'll get this disease. It's more of maybe when you'll get it and if you're going to do well or not. So again, the vaccines are continuing to be very effective. There's really no indication that a booster dose for those who have a good or immunocompetent is needed at this time. But it is recommended for those who are immunocompromised. A 3rd dose is recommended for those who are immunocompromised if they had one of the mRNA vaccines. But for our COVID ops, we are continuing to vaccinate active duty members because that is now required for all active duty service members to get vaccinated before the 2nd of November to be fully vaccinated. So that means having at least 1 dose of the Johnson vaccine, or 2 doses of the Moderna, or 2 doses of the, I'm going to say the word wrong, but Comirnaty vaccine, which is otherwise known as the Pfizer vaccine. So Comirnaty is really just the brand name that got bestowed on the Pfizer vaccine that we've had because it does have a biological license approval for 16 and older. So it is an FDA-approved product at this point for those 16 and older for the Comirnaty, or otherwise known as Pfizer vaccine. So if people are waiting for that FDA approval, there you have it. So please get vaccinated. We are continuing to vaccinate at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, you can walk in and get that COVID-19 vaccine, get that series started with the Comirnaty, or otherwise known as the Pfizer vaccine. It's exactly the same product, exactly the same thing, and it's exactly the same FDA-approved product. So that is Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Just walk in and go ahead and get it. So that for all active duty service members, that is required. We were able to get over 500 active duty members that had been waiting vaccinated last couple of weeks. So that's great, and we'll be able to get them their 2nd dose actually starting next week. And we are also, good news, we have the flu vaccine available now. So we're getting some limited shipments in, but we are starting to vaccinate our active duty population. So we are starting with the first responders, so that's the med group, fire and security forces are getting their flu vaccine. When you come in for your 2nd dose of COVID, you can also get your flu vaccine. So we are going to be co-administering the flu and the 2nd dose of COVID for those that had already gotten their first dose a couple weeks ago. So we'll be doing that in the next 2 weeks. My hope is that we'll get people their flu vaccine and be completely 100% for active duty flu vaccine by the end of the month. So that is our true hope. We are going to let commanders know so they can bring their units down to get the flu vaccine. I am concerned about flu this year because we had such a non-existent flu season last year. And if the RSV virus is any indication, because that has been going rampant right now in these last few months, then we probably will have a really bad flu season this year. So encourage folks to get the flu vaccine as well. You can get flu and COVID vaccine at the same time. There's no time intervals between those vaccines. You can get it together at the same time, or you can get one day and one the other day. But all those vaccines are readily available in the community as well, and it's free of charge. So most insurances, including TRICARE, will cover flu vaccine at one of the network pharmacies. So please get your flu vaccine in as well as your COVID vaccine. So the vaccines over time have been proven to be probably, the best thing for medicine has been vaccines. The advent of vaccines kind of tied with hand washing, but that has prevented a lot of disease and a lot of morbidity, and has allowed us to live longer. And that's probably the biggest really advance in medicine, is really vaccines. So having a vaccine preventable disease is huge, but it does take people to get the vaccine to prevent that disease. So please get your flu and your COVID-19 vaccine to prevent those diseases, because we are probably going to continue having this COVID surge, and we may have a bad flu season this year as well. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday for the COVID vaccine. We are going to push for active duty flu vaccines in the next couple of weeks. Once we get our active duty population squared away, we'll probably open it up for civilians as well who want to get the flu vaccine. But the main point right now is getting that COVID vaccine. That's really the biggest push. The other thing the other thing I just want to mention, if you did get your COVID vaccine through Edwards Air Force Base through the Med Group, and you want a digital vaccine record, you can request for us to put your information into the California Immunization Registry. Once we push that information in there, you will be able to go into the California Immunization Registry system to request a digital vaccine card, so digital wallet of your COVID-19 vaccine. So to do that, just send a message through the MHS Genesis patient portal. Even if you're not a patient with the Med Group, if you got the COVID vaccine through us, you should be able to create an account through the Genesis patient portal, and you should be able to send a message to the, and I'll read it off here. It's the United States Air Force, so USAF Edwards Pharmacy Communication. That's the message pool to send a message to the USAF Edwards Pharmacy Communication. We'll have some information out on Facebook and other means, but if you send a message to that pool and request your vaccine, your COVID-19 vaccine to be pushed into the California Registry database, give us a mobile phone number and an email that you want to kind of attach it to, because when you go and register for a digital wallet, they'll ask you your mobile phone number, and if they can't find you via that number, they'll ask you for an email. So give us that information, and then we'll be able to push that information in. So please do that if you want that digital ID. The next things in the news is obviously President Biden's announcement about mandatory vaccines for all federal workers. So that is obviously more news to come. That as we get more guidance for that, we will have to figure what that means down the road. But my understanding is that probably in the next 75 days, all federal workers, so DoD civilians, DoD contractors, or anybody that works with the federal government will have to be vaccinated. There's not going to be that ability to do a weekly testing. So that guidance is forthcoming, but we do have guidance currently right now that if you are a DoD civilian, you do have to attest to whether you're fully vaccinated or not. So I'm sure there's going to be some ICDs coming out about that, but you will have to sign an attestation form, basically saying that you're vaccinated with which vaccine, and sign off on that. If you're not fully vaccinated, or you do not want to disclose that information, then you will be subject to weekly testing by your unit for COVID. So that is coming down. Starting next week. So the Secretary of Defense did push that implementation guidance out. So again, there's more coming down. Honestly, the weekly testing is kind of a pain to get done, and it's not going to protect you against COVID. It'll see if you have COVID, but again, I think public health doesn't get enough credit. Preventive medicine doesn't get enough credit because you don't see the thing you're really avoiding. Sometimes you don't see things that you don't get. So, but there really is a huge value in public health and in doing things to prevent disease. Preventing disease is much more worthy and much more beneficial to you than actually getting the disease. So again, the vaccine is really the best course to go at this stage. So that is, and it's available free of charge right here on Edwards Air Force Base or in your community. So I really would push to get the vaccine, because it is probably going to come down the line anyways that you will be required to get the vaccine and not have that option to do a weekly test. those are some of the things I had, ma'am. Is
Sure.
there anything?
Well, I appreciate all that. I mean, that is probably the bulk of what's on everyone's minds at the moment. I wanted to ask you a question. So I started out a little skeptical in the beginning when this vaccination first became optional. And I had to do my research and, dig around a little bit to see, what we were up against. And then that's when I had to make a decision. I decided to go ahead and get vaccinated, and I really, really relied on public health, the local public health there, to help me kind of get there with the information, the facts, and all that goes with that. And then fast forward, there was a gap in there between when that kicked off and when children 12 and up were able to be vaccinated. And so yet again, I'm at a decision point. And I talked to the local pediatrician about, fertility and all things that are concerns for my children, before having made the decision to get them vaccinated. And one of the things that the pediatrician pointed out is how COVID-19 is not the first SARS, so this goes back about a decade of research, and, you can probably speak a little more eloquently on what I'm trying to say, but the vaccines that rolled out were not just based on research or testing and development within a span of 10 months. I think they had to have used a lot of that data and information that they had been gathering for over a decade to help kind of, get us where we are with the vaccines. But in my opinion, you don't hear a lot about that point of data where this has been ongoing for quite some time, not just 10 months and so a lot of people have questions about how they developed this vaccine, how they tested it in such a short span of time. But when she talked about that other research and testing, that kind of helped me with my decision for my children. So in your opinion, do you think there's some details that are kind of missing from the media or just the general conversation about the vaccine itself?
Yeah, definitely. You're right, and the more you research about how the vaccines were actually developed and what, really how far back they had to go to gather all that data to really make an effective vaccine. It's really just amazing the amount of science and technology and really this huge community of science and scientists that have been working on this their whole career. It's just amazing how, like I said, how smart we are as humans and how much advancement we've had in medicine and science to be able to achieve what we are able to achieve now, and be able to really fight this, this current pandemic. But people have invested their whole entire careers to just this. People have invested their whole entire careers to understanding pandemics and be able to prevent the next pandemic and what all the protocols may be needed if a pandemic does occur. We have a whole entire AFI on just disease pandemic preparation. So there's been a lot of investment into this. The mRNA technology has been going on for more than 20 years. And again, it's careers invested into developing this really very cool cutting edge technology, just like, the airplanes and things like that. There's obviously technology that are being, built upon. And just like you may not want to be using a car that was built in the 1920s, you may want the new Tesla. It's really the same thing. I mean, it's still a car, but obviously having a Tesla is going to be a lot better, you're going to be a lot safer, you're going to be able to speed a lot faster than you would in a Ford car, from the 1920s or something like that. So, the mRNA technology has been around for 20 years. And again, this has been in development, in the works for a really long time. SARS-CoV-1, the original, I'll back it up. Coronaviruses have been known for years, for decades, and along with influenza, coronavirus is one of the viruses that scientists have been worried about for a future pandemic, type of setting. So people have already investigated and put in careers on what to do if a coronavirus pandemic did occur. So that was even before SARS-CoV-1. People have been researching on coronaviruses and trying to get a better understanding of what treatment, what type of vaccines, what type of things can be done to prevent a coronavirus outbreak or a pandemic. When SARS-CoV-1 came about, they were already rapidly working on sequencing the virus and also developing vaccines. So already there was research that had already begun on SARS-CoV-1 way back when, and they've been continuing on that research. They didn't just let it go once it kind of sort of died down as a threat. They've been continuing with it because we knew there was probably going to be a coronavirus pandemic at some point. We're still concerned about an influenza pandemic. So there's a lot of investments in viral research and virologists that really do this as a living. They study viruses. They are able to figure out how they work, how they mutate. And it's not just in the U.S. Obviously, it's different countries, and it's a scientific community that has been investing their livelihood and their careers into researching all of this stuff. So there's a lot of data behind these vaccines. There's a lot of science behind these vaccines. And again, mRNA technology is not new. It has been created for a lot of different things, including cancer treatment. So it's being utilized as a technology to be able to do more advancements in medicine and be able to provide prevention and cures. So it's just continuing with that data, continuing with that technology. They already had a good idea of the sequencing, so the genetic code of the SARS-CoV-1 and 2. So they were able to get that genetic coding for SARS-CoV-2 pretty fast and pretty easily when it first started circulating around the world, when they first kind of knew about it. So they were able to utilize that data, that genetic sequencing, to be able to start developing on a vaccine. And so a lot of that initial phase 1 or data researching, collection, and kind of lab studies, that had already been done for probably 20, 30 years prior to, so that they were ready. They were ready when the pandemic when they really knew, hey, SARS-CoV-2 is going to be probably our next pandemic. They were ready already to really start developing that vaccine and start developing the clinical trials. The other thing is they were able to do multiple clinical trials at the same time. So they were able to do there's three clinical trials that you have to go through for an FDA authorization and approval. They were able to do a lot of that simultaneously. So one arm looked at safety, another arm looked at effectiveness, and then they were able to, from those kind of arms going at the same time, because they had enough volunteers for that vaccine, for that clinical trial, they were able then to get into that phase 3 clinical trial and were really able to show the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. And the 3 vaccines that we have on market are obviously not the only vaccines that are in the world. Obviously, multiple countries have been creating different vaccines. Multiple countries have been reviewing all the data from the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. So those vaccines have gone through their own type of accreditation agencies to really review the data and make sure that there's safety and effectiveness with those vaccines. So there really has been tons of research in it. But we also have to understand there's a lot of companies that were trying to make the vaccine, that were trying to get that vaccine on the market. The FDA and the scientists have been in on the clinical trials and the steps along each way. So a lot of the companies that were trying to make vaccine, actually, when they found out maybe the safety wasn't there or the effectiveness wasn't there, they actually stopped it. They were able to stop it. So I think there were like 43 trials going on. And only some of them have really risen to the cream of the crop. But there's still some companies that are still pursuing a vaccine. But there's a lot of vaccines that really just didn't make it out of the clinical trial or make it out of the lab. So you have to understand that there has been a very rigorous process to development of the vaccines, and it's based on years and years and years and decades of research that has gone before it. And the rigorous process of the FDA was met at every single step, and now to the final step of this of Comirnaty getting the full FDA approval. So it's a very safe product. The safety has been well documented, and now that it's been out really in circulation for more than 8 months, we really do have a lot more data on safety and effectiveness on the vaccines that we are currently using. So, I know people are concerned about long-term effects of the vaccine. There really isn't any. Vaccines, like I said, from just history and what vaccines do, the nature of vaccines, once you get the vaccine, you're going to know what those side effects are right away. It's going to be within the first 2 weeks. You'll know, you'll have a good understanding of what side effects has occurred. And again, the side effects are very fairly localized to just really some arm pain for the vaccine being there. Maybe your immune system being perked up, so you may have fever and feeling headachy and feeling tired just because your immune system is working. But that is really what vaccines are doing. They're not there to do anything else to your body except for your body to produce antibodies, so that when you see the natural virus in nature, when you see the disease, your body will kick in with those antibodies right away. So that is the only mission of the vaccine is to basically have your own body develop the antibodies, so that when it actually sees that virus, it'll have the antibodies. Your body will have the ready protection, ready on board to fight off that virus. Versus if you actually get infected and you're not vaccinated, it takes time for your body to develop those antibodies on its own, and it really does take time for the body to figure it out. In the meantime, your body actually gets sick from the virus, and there's a lot more complications. We've also had a lot of studies that have shown that when you get infected, it's worse infection, worse inflammation, worse symptoms, worse everything from the actual virus and from developing antibodies from the vaccine. So I know there's a lot of concerns for people who may have rheumatological issues, but a lot of the societies are highly recommending the vaccine, even if you have a autoimmune issue, because the disease will make your autoimmune issue a lot worse than the vaccine would. So, and pregnancy, I know, is a huge concern, but it has been proven to be very safe in pregnancy. A lot of the different societies, including the reproductive, some of the reproductive societies, have highly encouraged the vaccine for many, many months, not just recently, but for many, many months, because the data really does show that if you're pregnant, you will potentially have more severe complications from the infection than you would ever from the vaccine. And the beauty of getting vaccinated while you're pregnant is that your baby will probably have those antibodies transferred to them, and so they'll be protected in their first few months of life from the virus as well, which is huge, because we have seen babies get infected. We have seen babies in the ICU on oxygen, and it's just really unfortunate when you see that, because you know that baby could have been protected. The good news, too, is if you're breastfeeding, there's been shown that the antibodies can transfer in the breast milk, which will protect your baby as well. So really the benefits of the vaccine really outweigh any type of side effects from the vaccine. Getting COVID is not good. It's kind of like playing Russian roulette. Yes, you may do fine with it. It may just be like a cold-like symptoms, but we have seen a lot of kids hospitalized. We have seen a lot of young adults hospitalized, and we've seen a lot of them die from the virus. So really, I would not play Russian roulette with your life or your child's life or your neighbor's life, and just think that, okay, if I get it, I'll be fine. I think the fear of the vaccine right now, and a lot of people, is a lot more than the fear of the disease. And again, that's just really unfortunate. The vaccine is not something to be afraid of. The vaccine is like any other vaccine we've had in our lifetimes. It's just a vaccine. It's nothing. There's really nothing more. It's using just different technology. A lot of the vaccines we have on market for other viruses or for other diseases use different types of technology, recombinant this or adjuvant this. So there's different technologies that have been utilized to make vaccines that we've had for years. This is just another vaccine that is in our vaccine preventable disease toolkit. So it's just another vaccine, just like any of the other vaccines. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is just let your body have those antibodies so that you can have less severity of disease if you happen to get it, and also have a little bit of protection. So if you do happen to be exposed to somebody, you already have some protection against that virus. So I think there's too much fear for the vaccine and making it bigger than it is, and it really is not. It's really not something to be afraid of. There's no. It does not affect fertility. It won't. If you get vaccinated and you have a baby, it's not going to affect their future fertility. So there is absolutely no biological plausibility for the vaccines to affect fertility. So it just doesn't happen. It's like it's like saying, if you use a wrench to eat food, it just doesn't make any sense. So there's no fertility issues from the vaccine. That there's just no biological way for vaccines to affect fertility. So again, I can't emphasize enough that the vaccines are very safe and that they've been very effective. And it really breaks my heart when I do hear somebody being hospitalized or passing away when it at this point doesn't have to happen. The winter surge was definitely different, but at this point, there's really no reason for that, no really good reason for it. So again, vaccines are very helpful. So hopefully, sorry I didn't go too far into
Well,
that.
no, thank you for that. I think you make a really big point in that, I guess a lot of folks, to include myself in the beginning, expected that for us to develop a vaccine for this virus, it should take the amount of time that it took however long ago, the way that we did other vaccines, and that's absolutely not the case anymore as we have advances in technology and medicine. And in fact, if it took them 10 months to a year for this one, in the future, it may only take 6 months or 3 months, and it'll continue to just shrink down. So that's one perspective I think that everybody needs to consider. And the second thing is that, or the second point that you made, or one of many, but another one that stuck out with me is that you may be young, fit, and healthy, and that may be fine and dandy for yourself, but if you're a carrier, you could kill off everybody around you or get them sick. And it's not just about yourself in this case. It's about people on your left and right, your loved ones, your coworkers. I mean, when we're talking military and readiness, I mean, it's almost a sacrifice that we have to make for that in itself. And so I guess since Jeremy's been here standing idly by, we need to go over to him for questions and see what we have.
Yes, Chief. I thank you so much. I do have a couple questions, but if I could, ma'am, right before, I just want to say thank you for your expertise and giving us this information that we may or may not have the time to actually look into ourselves. When I hear you speak, I hear and I see a professional that cares about her community and that really wants us to understand the information and is trying to give us that in the best way possible to protect ourselves and our families. And so thank you and your medical team for making that possible for us specifically at Edwards.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, ma'am. So with the first question, it is in regards to the booster shot of what kind of your opinion is on the booster and the applicability of such. And then the second question predominantly revolves around those with existing health conditions who are unable to get the vaccines. Do they have any options going forward?
Okay. Yeah, so for the booster dose, currently what is approved is a booster dose for those who are immunocompromised. So if you have a condition where you may not have mounted, let me go back on the terminology for it. It's actually a third dose. So if you are immunocompromised, you may not have mounted a really good immune response to the first 2 doses, so third dose is indicated. So it's not really a booster dose because you're not boosting anything. It's basically providing another dose so you can mount a better immune response. So if you are immunocompromised, you should get you got the mRNA vaccine, so either Pfizer or Moderna, you should get the third dose to continue with what you should be getting as your primary series to be fully vaccinated. And that third dose would be due 28 days or longer. So if you got your second dose in July, you can still get your third dose. So at least 28-day interval between after the second dose. There isn't any information right now for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So if you did get that, you do have to kind of hold out. But I think more information will be coming forth for that. But if you're immunocompromised, and that, honestly, that kind of goes through a whole range of things. But you know, if you've had chemotherapy, you're on medication that can make you immunocompromised, like you're on chronic steroids for whatever situation, that would be where you really should get that third dose. And that third dose is available through the Med Group. It's also available through the community. No one's going to really have you show any kind of proof for it. You basically just say, hey, I'm immunocompromised, I need my third dose, and they'll go ahead and give it to you. So I do encourage the third dose for those who are immunocompromised. Right now, the booster dose, so booster doses are for people who are quote unquote immunocompetent. So it means that, you know, we are pretty sure with the first two doses, you don't have anything wrong with your immune system, so you're able to mount an immune response, a proper immune response. So so you need to boost it because it may be that immune response that you had is now waning over time. So you need a booster. This is equivalent to MMR or chickenpox, where we all got maybe a primary series of one shot of chickenpox, but we needed a booster dose a few years later because the immunity for that chickenpox wanes over time. Or things like tetanus. You know, tetanus is, as adults, we get it every 10 years because we know over 10 years the immunity to tetanus wanes over time. So you need another booster dose, tetanus shot, every 10 years. So if you didn't get your tetanus booster in the last 10 years, go ahead and get it too. So those are things that we do for booster doses. Right now, the data, and like I said, the recent CDC published some recent data really showing that booster doses are not needed at this time because the people who are fully vaccinated, the likelihood of them getting hospitalized or dying or really even getting COVID, it's still protective. We don't see really a lot of waning immunity for people who were vaccinated even back in December, January timeframe. So while the government is ready to provide that booster dose if it's needed, because that's obviously a big logistical implementation if a booster dose is needed, it is not currently looking like the data is really not there to see if there's a booster dose is needed. But the CDC and the FDA is actually going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks to review the data and to look and see if that is something that is going to be recommended. They met about a month ago and did not see the data for it. So they're going to continue to evaluate that to see if we do need a booster dose at some point. But right now, at this time, there's no indication that we are going to need that booster dose. But I do encourage people who did not mount or immunocompromised and potentially did not mount a good immune response to go ahead and get that third dose. So that's for that. And then for people who have medical conditions, so the only contraindication, the only reason you can't get the vaccine is if you have a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine. You're not going to know that unless you actually get the vaccine. The other contraindication is if you have a severe allergic reaction to the components of the vaccine. So for the Comirnaty or Pfizer vaccine, that's specifically the polyglycol ethylene, or PEG as it stands for. So if you have a severe allergy, meaning you've had anaphylaxis to things like if you had some Go Lightly or something like that, and you had a severe allergic reaction to that or anaphylaxis, then that's a contraindication. But that's pretty rare. There's not a lot of people that know that they would have that specific allergy to that specific component. So that would really be the only contraindication. There are some precautions, which means that we're going to be watchful, but there's no reason you can't get the vaccine. So there were some guidelines for that. But basically, the only reason you can't get the vaccine is if you've had a allergic reaction or anaphylaxis to the vaccine or to a component of the vaccine. So that really is it. Otherwise, the vaccine is recommended for everybody because, again, like I said, if you have a chronic medical condition, getting COVID is actually going to throw your chronic medical condition into a worse situation, and you're actually at a higher risk of having more severe complications from COVID if you actually gotten infected. So the fact that the vaccine prevents you from possibly getting infected and prevents you from having those severe complications, that's why the vaccine is of benefit to you. So if you have chronic medical conditions, you're the very candidate that actually does need the vaccine to prevent you from getting worse complications if you did get COVID. So that really is the bottom line. Unless you have an allergic reaction to the vaccine, there is really no reason you can't get the vaccine.
Cool. Any other questions, Jeremy?
No, that's it, Chief. Thank you so
Wow.
much, ma'am.
Yes, I have one thing I was just going to add from your comment, ma'am, but because of the new technology, I actually just read, and this is pretty exciting news, honestly, that Moderna is actually developing a vaccine using this really cool mRNA technology. They're developing a vaccine that will give you the flu vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and RSV all in one shot, all in one vaccine. So they're developing that, which is really exciting news. Again, as a pediatrician, RSV has been the bane of our existence. I have been many nights in ICUs and hospital beds and taking care of RSV patients and young kids who just, there's nothing that can be done for them. I mean, really, you just have to do supportive care and suctioning out their nasal mucus, but they really can't breathe. And it's just really heartbreaking to see a child with RSV. And that really is right now what's going on in our hospital beds. And especially in the South, there's just, RSV has just kind of gone wild down there. And there's a lot of kids who have co-infection with COVID and RSV, and it's just not a good situation. We've not really had an RSV vaccine before because it's always been very, there's really no push for it. And it's just been a lot of delays on that. We've only been able to offer antibody infusions to kids who may have complications from RSV. So like our kids who have heart conditions or asthma, but there really hasn't been a vaccine developed. So I'm actually really excited that this is a jump off from the technology that has already been proven so successful for COVID, that they're going to be able to jump and use this mRNA technology for us. And again, that advance in medicine and technology, this is gonna be huge for us in the next few years if we're able to get that RSV, an actual vaccine for RSV, especially for our kids under 2. That's really just going to be a huge advent from utilizing this technology to really keep going further and to keep doing preventable diseases. So I'm really excited about that news. So definitely looking forward to that. But I mean, this mRNA technology has been proven so successful that I think this is going to be how vaccines are going to be developed in the future, and how a lot of the things that we're suffering, or we've suffered even before COVID, we're going to be able to do a lot of advances in medicine and do that preventive health and public health in the future. So I'm really excited about that use of technology.
Wow, okay. Thank you for that. Ma'am, thank you once again for joining us. As always, we appreciate you coming on with your expertise to kind of school us on